gives remaining he gives away, which is called Patigraha. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is an example of a discussion between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Raya. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the discussion asked, what is the goal of life? The beginning of the discussion goes like this: what is the goal of life? And Ramananda Raya says, Varnasrama system. But then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said this is external. External means basically it's a true system. But in this stage, because of the degradation of Kali Yuga, everything has got mixed up. But still, if the essence is if somebody can follow this, it will ultimately enable him to reach perfection of life. There is a quote also that it says that if one performs this Varnasrama system, or one acts as per the Varnasrama system for 100 births, he gets an opportunity to take birth in Brahmaloka. So this Varnasrama system is designed in such a way people can gradually practice the system and ultimately achieve goal of life. And as human beings, we all need some engagement for an activity. And everyone should be educated accordingly. Just because somebody is born in a Brahmana family, it does not mean that he is a Brahmana. He has to get trained to be qualified, and he has to live as a Brahmana. And not that he's taken a birth and he gets trained also, but he works like a Shudra. That is not a Brahmana. Some examples are given. Amrish Maharaja was a king, but he was a well-versed Brahmana. So it is said that wherever there was no water, he was constantly performing yajnas. And another important point is that it is said that before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, everyone was very, very educated and he was cultured, but there was no devotion. That is when Advaita Acharya appeared and he made Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to appear in this Kali Yuga, so that living entities can be delivered. There are other intricacies in each of these systems. For example, we don't have time to discuss in detail, but I'll give an example. It is said that anyone who does not respect the Brahmana as he should be respected will go to hell. But at the same time, if a Brahmana takes all the respects that is given to him for himself, then he will go to hell. So there are two complexities. For an outside person, he has to respect the Brahmana, and if he doesn't do so, he goes to hell. At the same time, if a Brahmana takes the respects that is given to him, he will also go to hell, because a Brahmana is not supposed to keep anything with himself. So if he is respected as a representative of God. So Brahmana does not take credit for this. Otherwise, if he keeps it for himself, he goes to hell. Text number 20. I'll read the translation. After many, many births, when the results of one's pious activities mature, one gets an opportunity to associate with pure devotees. Then one is able to cut the knot of bondage to ignorance, which bound him because of varied fruitive activities. As a result of associating with devotees, one gradually renders service to Lord Vasudeva, who is transcendental, free from attachment to the material world, beyond the mind and words, and independent of everything else. That Bhakti Yoga devotional service to Lord Vasudeva is the real path of liberation. So there are three stages of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You all know by now, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahman realization is the beginning stage, where one realizes the impersonal aspect of the Lord. Second stage is Paramatma realization, a realization of the Lord in the heart, who is situated as the super soul. And the last stage is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one can achieve liberation when he comes to an understanding he is a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this quote is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto also. So in the material world, in the bodily concept of life, everyone is working, but they are working in the wrong direction. But when one starts practicing the process of self-realization, ultimately he reaches a stage of Brahmabhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu matbhaktim labate param. So one reaches and he realizes that he is not this body, he's a spirit soul, and as he advances further and further, he realizes that he's a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and his constitutional position is to render service to the Lord. That is when his devotion service begins. Otherwise, there is a possibility he might have spiritually realized that he is not this body, but but if he's working on the bodily concept of life, it is useless and misdirected. So that is why in this Brahman realization, generally, people don't have an understanding of the complete process of self-realization. And also in Brahma Jyoti, there is no activity, so they get frustrated and then they come back. So the translation for this Brahmaputra Prasanatma is one who is thus transcendentally situated, realizes the Supreme Brahman, and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. So we have a problem in this material world, that is hankering and lamentation. When we don't have anything, we have an hankering for that. And when we get it, we may lose it at some point of time, because we will never have anything eternally in this material world. And then we start lamenting. But one who surpasses the stage of hankering and lamentation, he's equally disposed to every living entity. In that stage one starts getting pure devotional service to the Lord. And the beginning of the stage of the devotional service itself, the liberation process starts. The process of liberation starts when one starts practicing devotional service. So then the next stage he proceeds when he's attracted by the beauty of the Supreme Lord, and his mind is always engaged at the lotus feet. Then he gradually processes to Paramatma, and then gradually progresses further to the Bhagavan stage, which is the ultimate Supreme Personality of Godhead. At that stage, he loses all interest in material activities, material opulence, material products, etc. And this Varnashrama system is given by the Lord in Bharatavarsha moment. So, and it is a process by which, by practicing this Varnashrama system, one can get liberation. So the system is designed in such a way that one can progress on a stage-by-stage basis. Srila Vishwanath Thakura, one of the acharyas in our Sampradaya, gives a commentary on this. He says, for all the living entities, the Supreme Lord is all attractive, and all are servants of the Lord, but no one is equal to the Lord. That means we cannot become Lord. If somebody starts thinking that he's become Lord, it's very, very offensive. Our constitutional position is to be servant of the Lord, and that is to render service. And one has to perform unalloyed devotion service. Of course, it may not be possible at the beginning stage, but as one progresses, the goal we make a goal for everything in life. By the time I'm 30 or 40, I must have a house, I must have a car, I must have a family, I must have so and so, so and so. Similarly, one must have a goal for a spiritual life also. And the goal should be to perform unalloyed devotion service, by which he becomes eligible for liberation. Srila Prabhupada, of course, has given some examples also in other places. One of the important points of practicing this devotional service is association with devotees. With the association of devotees, one can come out of this mode of ignorance, and then gradually he starts to becoming eligible for liberation. So example is given as to how Dhritarashtra was all through in his life in the mode of ignorance. But ultimately, at the end of his life, after all the same Vidura tried to enlighten Dhritarashtra, and but he failed, and to the extent that he was thrown out of the palace also. But then after Dhritarashtra lost all his sons. That is the time Vidura, out of his compassion, Vidura was a great devotee of the Lord and he's a Mahajana also. So at that time, after the battle was over and everyone died, Vidura came to the palace and he spoke to Dhritarashtra in a very cruel, in a rude manner. In the sense, he said, you tried to kill the Pandavas. In the same house, you are eating the remnants like a dog. That is when Dhritarashtra uh, got attracted by the words of Vidura and he became self-realized. So anyone who is born in this Bharatavarsha must practice this bhakti, and the beginning is the permanent realization, gradually proceed forward. There are two things. One is Jiva Bhuta and the one is Brahma Bhuta. Jiva Bhuta is one who identifies with the body, and Brahma Bhuta is one who is already liberated, and he has attained the Brahman realization. So the first stage of Brahman realization, the uh, symptoms are that he has already come to a realization that he is not this body. And when this stage starts, then Guru starts planting the seed of devotion service. And by the favor of the Supreme Lord, one get association of devotees, and these devotees speak only Krishna Katha. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also comment that the Lord has unlimited qualities and glories, which cannot be described by the limited. And he's an abode of prem, and he's also the soul of all super souls. So what happens is that when we start practicing devotion service, it is an opportunity given to us by the mercy of the Lord. And when we start practicing devotion service, the next stage is that we must go and preach what we have learned. One will never be a qualified preacher from the beginning, but whatever one has learned, one has to go and preach to the others. This was an example of Krishna concluding a lesson in Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, whoever speaks these teachings of Bhagavad Gita is the most dear to me. Also, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted that whoever is born in Bharatavarsha must go out and spread this mission of Krishna consciousness to others. So the first stage is we must start practicing, and as we go on, we should preach to others. Text number 21. I'll recite this sloka. Etateva hi deva gayanti aho amisham kim akari shobhanam prasanne samsvit utasvayam harihi yad janma labdam drishu bharatad chire mukunda sevopaikam spruha hinaha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Since the human form of life is the sublime position for spiritual realization, all the demigods in heaven speak in this way. How wonderful it is for these human beings to have been born in the land of Bharatavarsha. They must have executed pious acts of austerities in the past, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself must have been pleased with them. Otherwise, how could they engage in devotional service in so many ways? We demigods can only aspire to achieve human birth in Bharatavarsha to execute devotional service, but these human beings are already engaged there. So, very nice verse, wherein there are demigods in heaven, there are 33 crore demigods, there are denizens in heavens also. But when they see us, the demigods are the ones who are living entities on a higher platform than conditioned living entities like us. The difference between us and them is that we forget that we are servants of the Lord. The demigods are on a higher platform. They practice devotion service, but they have some material desire. However, what happens is that though the demigods are situated in different heavenly planets, they see those who are born in Bharatavarsha, and they start thinking that those who are born in Bharatavarsha are the best. They have got an opportunity to perform devotional service. Now, this is true. The reason is that, to give an example, one may have a lot of opulence, material opulence. And when one becomes attached to it, now it is not very easy to have material and opulence and not to have attachment. So when one has material opulence, he starts becoming attached to it. When he starts developing an attachment, his desires keep going on and on and on to the extent that it can drive him to forget his constitutional position as servants of Krishna. So if someone has lot of opulence, then he starts getting frustrated. What am I to do with all this? I have 10 houses. What can I do with it? Now, today, if you have one house where you stay, and if you have another house which you want to use it for giving on a rent or something like that, it is not very easy because you have to rent it out to somebody, and you cannot rent it out to a non-vegetarian person who will cook and serve non-vegetarian there. So because eating meat is a sinful activity. So what happens is that we get entangled into this material world somehow or the other. That's why in the beginning of the class I said we have to do activity, but we should know how to act. That is very important. So those who are born in this Bharata Varsha, they have done some pious activities in the past. That is why the Lord has been pleased with them, and He has given them an opportunity to take birth in Bharata Varsha. And demigods, they have also performed some pious activity because of which they are in the higher planets. But they realize that even though they are in the heavenly planets, it is easier to practice devotional service in the earthly planet than then. So when they are there in the heavenly planets, what happens is that they have achieved some results of pious activities and they are there. But when the moment the results are exhausted, they have to come back to this material world and take birth again. So they are thinking, why all this opulence? And in fact, if you understand Chaitanya Charitamrita, in fact, there's a mention in Chaitanya Bhagavat also. If someone has got Krishna Prema, if he doesn't have any material wealth, still he's the richest person. For example, Kolvecha Sridhar, Sudama Brahmana, Shuklambar Brahmachari, they don't have any opulence, but they are the richest person because they have love for Krishna. But if someone has got all the material opulence, but he does not have attraction for Krishna, he is the poorest person. This is a quote in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So what is required? We start developing attraction. Somebody has got this, I must also have this. No, but Srila Prabhupada always gives a quote, we must only work as much as to keep our body and soul together. That is all. One does not have to aspire for any other thing beyond that. So the demigods can only are aspiring. Why not they come back to Bharat Varsha to execute devotional service? But unfortunately, we see that not everybody, particularly these days in Kali Yuga, everybody is running after material opulence. And Srila Prabhupada gives a quote from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which says, Bharata Bhumite Haile Manushya Janmayara Janma Sartaka Kari Kara Upara Upakara. The translation says, one who has taken his birth as a human being in the land of India, Bharat Varsha, should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all other people. So this is what I mentioned. And then in the beginning of the class also, that one who has taken birth in India should consider himself to be very, very fortunate. But unfortunate people think that India is not a place to stay. They have to go to America, they have to go to European countries, they have got to go to Japan. Still in the Eastern countries, there is some culture. For example, in Japan and all, they practice religion very strictly. Of course, they perform sinful activities also. But those who try to run after material opulence, they are foolish people. That's what this sloka says. Instead, one should be contented with whatever is there by living in India and using the opportunity to practice the Varnashrama system and ultimately reach the goal of life. The reason is, it is mentioned, there are many facilities in India uh, for executing devotional service. In Bharatavarsha, all the acharyas have contributed their experience. We know that there are 4 sampradayas, and there are acharyas for each of the sampradaya, and each one has given a lot of their realizations. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally appeared. Next point is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally appeared to teach the people of Bharatavarsha how to progress in spiritual life and be fixed in devotional service to the Lord. So, from all point of view, Bharatavarsha is a very, very special where one can easily understand the process of devotional service and adopt this practice in one's life to make it successful. If one makes his life successful in devotional service, then the next thing starts is he preaches devotional service in other parts of the world, which is what our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada did. And that is what is our duty as per the instructions given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We may not be able to go, everyone may not be fortunate enough to go outside the world and preach, but wherever he is situated, he should continue to preach after he starts practicing. Ultimately, the purpose is that the whole world should be able to benefit with us because of our whatever we give. So the demigods are glorifying the residents of Bharatvarsha because there is an opportunity to perform devotional service. Also, this Bharatavarsha has got many, many holy places, holy mountains, holy rivers, etc., which is not available everywhere. Text number 22. I'll read the translation. The demigods continue. After performing the very difficult task of executing Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, undergoing austerities, observing vows, and giving charity, we have achieved this position as inhabitants of the heavenly planets. But what is the value of this achievement? Here we are certainly very engaged in material sense gratification, and therefore we can hardly remember the lotus feet of Narayana. Indeed, because of our excessive sense gratification, we have almost forgotten his lotus feet. Very, very important verse. I'll repeat it again, sentence by sentence. The demigods are in their prayers are offering. After performing the very difficult task of executing Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, so those who have taken residence in heavenly planets, they have achieved that due to many reasons. One is they have performed many, many ritualistic sacrifices. Other one is undergoing austerities. Many have performed a lot of austerities. Many even now perform, they go to Ganges, take bath and come back. Again, they perform sinful activities. But then the results of the pious activities continue. And the results of impious activities also happen. Then they have observed a lot of vows and giving charity. For example, we observe this Adhik Mas. We observe some vows. So then the next question is giving charity. Many people give charity to schools, colleges, hospitals, and so forth. All these are pious activities and will help one to attain the heavenly planets. Then the next thing they say, what is the value of this achievement? Here we are certainly very engaged in material sense gratification, and therefore we can hardly remember the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. That means that they have two things. They have to perform devotion service also, and they have also, because of the opulence, they are engaged in material sense gratification. So many times we see that people who get material opulence, even in this world, like I mentioned, they want to go to America. And when they are there, they get entangled with it and they don't want to come back from that. And then there's a possibility of forgetting the lotus feet of the Lord. Then they say, indeed, because of our excessive sense gratification, we have almost forgotten his lotus feet. So this is the prayer that demigods are giving. So the Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the land of Bharatvarsha is so exalted that by taking birth there, one can not only attain the heavenly planets, but also go directly back to Godhead. So by taking birth in heavenly planets, one may perform whatever the methods I have given, performing austerities, Vedic sacrifice, etc., by which they can attain heavenly planets. But devotees don't want to go there. They want to go back to Godhead. So there are two options, either attain heavenly planets or go back to Godhead. So these are two options available in Bharatvarsha. And then Srila Prabhupada gives a quote from Bhagavad Gita 9:25. I'll read the translation because we may be short of time. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. Those who worship ancestors go to the ancestors, which is Pitraloka, and those who worship me will live with me. So this is what the Lord says to Arjuna. So what is the use of going to heavenly planets, knowing that it has one has to come back? So the demigods even regret having been elevated to the higher planetary system. So the demigods also are not very satisfied with their opulence there. Instead, they become captivated by a higher standard of sense gratification, and therefore they forget the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. So more the opulence, more the chance to forget. So distraction is more wherever there is a lot of opulence. That is why in heavenly planets also there is a lot of distraction. Mm. Now, there are some other contrasting examples also, which is given in Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto. Example is Prithu Maharaj, though he was an empowered incarnation of God, he took birth in Bharatavarsha, he performed his duty, and finally he wound up and went back to Godhead. Similarly, his good wife Archie also went back to Godhead. So it is possible to go to Godhead in earth than heavenly planets. And even in Bharatavarsha, one has to put efforts. It is not that without putting efforts, one can get perfection of life. For anything, even for spiritual activities, one has to perform his own endeavor. Generally, people, when at a certain stage, they want to have liberation, but that liberation does not long for a long time. It's a liberation is by attaining a liberation, one may go step by step. Example is like a student studying in a school. He studies third standard, fourth standard. Say fourth standard, he studies, passes the exam, prepares for the exam, but then there is a short vacation. Nowadays, that vacation is also reduced or replaced. And then when he goes to the fifth standard, again he has to work hard. Like that, it goes on. So liberation is not the ultimate. The ultimate is goal of is attained. Ultimate goal of life should be to attain love for the Lord. But that is prema. Uh, Text number 23. Kalpayusham stanaya jayat punarbhavat Shanayusham bharata bhujayo varam Shanena matyena gatam manasvinah Sanyasya samyanti abhayam param Hare. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A short life in the land of Bharatavarsha is preferable to a life achieved in Brahmaloka for millions and billions of years because even if one is elevated to Brahmaloka, he must return to repeated birth and death. Although life in Bharatavarsha in a lower planetary system is very short, one who lives there can elevate himself to full Krishna consciousness and achieve the highest perfection, even in this short life, by fully surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Thus, one attains Vaikuntha Loka, where there is neither anxiety nor repeated birth in a material body. So, very, very important verse again. A short life in the land of Bharatavarsha is much better than compared to life even in Brahmaloka. Lord Brahma's lifespan goes to trillions of years. Like that, denizens there also have a long lifespan. So here they say that what is the use of life even in Brahmaloka if there is no devotional service? And ultimately, they must return back to repeated birth and death. That means even Lord Brahma performs devotional service. This is also given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma performs devotional service out of fear of death. That means Brahma is also afraid of death. And then they say, well, instead of that, it is better to take birth in Bharat Varsha. Even if one has got a short life, at least he can practice Krishna consciousness, by which he can achieve perfection and go back to Vaikuntha. from where he doesn't have to come back again to take birth again in the material world. This is how they pray. So one who has taken birth here has got an opportunity to study the direct instructions given by Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita or by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Sri Chaitanya Bhagavad, etc. And it is easier to take this decision in the human form of life, and particularly in a place like Bharatavarsha. So the process is one should surrender to Krishna and then he takes care of the concerned devotee. So this is the best opportunity offered to the inhabitants of Bharatavarsha. And one who has a desire to go back to Godhead and lives accordingly is no longer liable to the results of karma, whether good or bad. And then there's mention that even if one gets an opportunity at one time to become Brahma, what is the use? It is no use. But instead, it is better to live in Bharatvarsha where there is Sadhu Sangha. The Sadhu Sangha is very, very important for practicing devotion service. So the demigods feel that in Bharatvarsha there is Sadhu Sangha. Another point that is mentioned, important point is that even in Bharatvarsha, people have their own means to misinterpret religion. For example, in the beginning of the class, I mentioned about people go to Ganga and take bath and come back and commit again sinful activities. Some people even think that they should stay in holy places like Ganga and so forth. Yes, one can stay in holy place. That's one point that is mentioned by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also. But generally, what happens is that after staying in a holy place, they start. The purpose of staying in a holy place is to render unalloyed devotion service. But people get entangled there also by getting involved in some business, and also over a period of time they may indulge in sinful activities also. And finally, what happens is that by committing sinful activities in a holy dham, one may have to take the body of an animal in the same place. So that is why one should have a proper understanding of the subject. Text number 24. न यत्र वैकुण्ठकथा सुधापगा न साधवो भागवतास् तदाश्रयाः न यत्र यज्ञेशमकामहोत्सवाः सुरेशलोकोऽपि न वैससेव्यताम्. Translation says, an intelligent person does not take interest in a place, even in the topmost planetary system, if the pure Ganges of topics concerning the Supreme Lord's activities does not flow there. If there are not devotees engaged in the service on the banks of such a river of piety, or if there are no festivals of Sankirtan Yajna to satisfy the Lord, especially since Sankirtan Yajna is recommended in this age. Another very important verse. So an intelligent person is one who does not take interest in taking birth in a place. Few points are mentioned. Even if it is at birth in the topmost planetary system, if the pure Ganges of topics concerning Supreme Lord's activities does not flow there. So here it is not the actual Ganges river, but the topics of, that is Krishna Katha is compared to Ganges. And in a place where there is no Ganges of Krishna Katha, then there is no point of taking birth there. The next point it says that if there are not devotees engaged in the service on the banks of such a river of piety. So what is the point of taking birth in a place where there is no sadhu sangha? Because that is the most important to practice devotional service. One cannot practice devotional service unless and until there is a sadhu sangha. In fact, one of the senior disciples of our founder Acharya, his name is Bhaktivedanta Swami, I forgot her name. She said that sadhu sangha is something that is very important, right from a person who enters the movement all the way up to the top. That means irrespective of whatever association whatever position one has got in the process of performing devotional service, they might have obtained some important position or so forth. Everyone has to get sadhu sangha for further elevation. And then the next point that is said that if there are no festivals of Sankirtana Yajna to satisfy the Lord, what is the point of taking birth in such a place? So Sankirtana Yajna has to take place, then there is a purpose in taking birth in such a place. The purport, Srila Prabhupada mentioned some very important points. He says Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the land of Bharatavarsha, especially in Bengal in the district of Nadia, where Navadvipa is situated. It is therefore to be concluded, as stated by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, that within this universe, this Earth is the best planet. So, as you know, there's so many planets in this universe. So, compared to all this, Earth is the best planet. Then he further says, and on this planet, the land of Bharatavarsha is the best. In the land of Bharatavarsha, Bengal is still better. In Bengal, the district of Nadia is still better. And in Nadia, the blessed place is Navadvipa because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared there to inaugurate the performance of the sacrifice of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So this is the conclusion of one of the Acharyas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. And the best part is that not only Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, he was accompanied by his confidential associates like Nityananda Prabhu, Gadadhar Pandita, Advaita Acharya, and by devotees like Sivas Pandita, and who are always engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord and are always engaged in describing the glories of the Lord. So that is why it is called the best place in the universe. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also gives a quote from Chaitanya Bhagavad, which says, one should not desire to be elevated even to a place in the heavenly planetary system if it has no propaganda to expand the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no trace of Vaishnavas, pure devotees of the Lord, and no festivals for spreading Krishna consciousness. So there is no point in elevating oneself to the heavenly planets if there is no propaganda for spreading the glories of the Lord. So that is why it is very often Srila Prabhupada emphasizes the importance of our practicing first and then gradually start propagating it, the glories of the Lord. That is preaching. Then there's no point of taking birth if there are no Vaishnavas who are pure devotees of the Lord and where there are no festivals for spreading Krishna consciousness. It would be better to live perpetually cramped within an airtight bag of mother's womb, where one can at least remember the lotus feet of the Lord, than to live in a place where there is no opportunity to remember his lotus feet. I pray not to be allowed to take birth in such a condemned place. So the prayer is that it is better to remain in the womb of a mother. This is like an airtight bag. It is the most pathetic situation for a child in the womb. And it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam itself that the child prays to the Lord. One may think how the child prays to the Lord. The Lord is situated in the heart of the child also. The child is so frustrated. Imagine ourselves being situated. We have also gone through that. And in such a pathetic situation that the child wants to come out. And at that time, he is not able to come out. So until he comes out, he prays to the Lord. And the Lord within the heart inspires the child to pray. So what is the use of taking birth in a place? It is better to stay in a child's womb instead of taking place in a birth in a place where there is no practice of devotion service. Example, Sukadeva Goswami himself stayed in the womb of his mother for a very long time. Next important point is that even the performance of 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices cannot compare to the sacrifice of Sankirtana. According to the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, if one compares Sankirtana Yajna to other yajnas, he is a Pashandi or an infidel and is liable to be punished by Yamaraj. So even by performing 100 Ashwamedha yajnas, one cannot compare the results of the yajna to the performance of Sankirtana Yajna. And Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, if one starts comparing the result of Sankirtana Yajna to that of other yajnas, he's a Pashandi, like an atheist itself. And is likely to be punished by Yamaraj. Then there's an important point that even sometimes there may be sadhu sangha, but compatibility may be difficult. Uh, we can also see on a day-to-day basis. We stress on sadhu sangha, but compatibility within the sadhu sangha sometimes become very, very difficult. But still, when there is an opportunity to perform devotional service, one should take it and continue. An opportunity to serve Krishna is more important than being without service in heavenly planets. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also comment that there is plenty of Krishna Katha available. That is why we should always hear from Sadhu Sangha Krishna Katha. One should hear Krishna Katha only, and that too from devotees only. Hearing from an Avaishnava is like a milk touched by a serpent. And devotional service can be nourished only by the association of sadhus in sadhu sangha or association of devotees. There is a small example given, discussion between Prakashananda Saraswati and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Prakashananda Saraswati asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu's background, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "I am just a fool, and my Guru Maharaj said, you just chant Har Kirtan and chant the holy name, that is enough for you." It's an analogy. Text number 25. I'll read the translation. Bharatvarsha offers the proper land and circumstances in which to execute devotional service, which can free one from the results of jnana and karma. If one obtains a human body in the land of Bharatavarsha with clear sensory organs with which to execute the Sankirtan Yajna, but in spite of this opportunity, he does not take to devotional service, he is certainly like liberated forest animals and birds that are careless and are therefore again bound by a hunter. So in Bharatavarsha, the Lord is very, very merciful. Those who have taken birth, they have got an opportunity to, they have got senses by which they can execute Sankirtan Yajna. But in spite of this, if one does not take this opportunity, he is just like a liberated forest animal. For example, is given that we may have a nice parrot in a cage. The parrot would always like to think that I must go out of this cage. But what happens is that the parrot comes out of the cage and gets hunted by a hunter. So like that, those who have got an opportunity to take birth and practice devotional service, they should consider themselves to be very fortunate. Otherwise, they will end up in the hands of a hunter. Hunter means not the physical hunter, hunting of Maya. And Srila Prabhupada mentions a reference sloka of Srimad Bhagavatam 7.523. The devotional service can be performed in 9 ways. This is a verse given by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Swaranam, Archanam Vandanam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. So in Bharatvarsha, one can not only visit holy places, also but he can practice 9 process of devotional service. And there are also chances of associating with many pure devotees who have no desire other than to execute devotional service. That means one can get opportunity to perform devotional service in the association of pure devotees only who have no other desire other than to execute pure devotional service. That means we must look out for a devotee who practices pure devotional service, Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyana Avartam. Then one can attain pure devotional service. And this way one can become free from the bondage of material conditions. One can also become free from the bondage of jnana and karma and so forth. The other path of jnana and karma are not very profitable. Pious activities can elevate one to the higher planetary systems, and by speculative knowledge, one can merge into the Brahman existence. So by good karma, one can go to heavenly system, and by being a jnani, by speculative knowledge, one can enter into Brahmajyoti. That is Brahman existence. But there is no real profit. One has to come back to the material world. One should, in the human form of life, one should endeavor to go home, back to Godhead. Otherwise, there is no difference between human life and the lives of animals. Animals also have freedom, but because of their lower birth, they cannot use it. But human form of life has got the opportunity to take up this opportunity of devotional service. Taking advantage of the facilities offered to a human being who has taken birth in the land of Bharatavarsha should become a fully enlightened devotee and go back to Godhead. This is the subject matter of the Krishna conscious movement. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that he has advised that one who has taken birth as a human being in Bharatavarsha must first realize himself as a part and parcel of Krishna, that is self-realization. And then, after taking to Krishna consciousness, he must distribute this knowledge all over the world. That is when he realizes God realization. So it must start with self-realization. That self-realization must transform to God realization. Text number 26. In India, there are many worshippers of demigods, the various officials appointed by the Supreme Lord, such as Indra, Chandra, Surya, all of whom are worshipped differently. The worshippers offer the demigod their oblations, considering the demigods as part and parcel of the whole, the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts these offerings and gradually raises the worshippers to the real standard of devotional service by fulfilling their desires and aspirations. Because the Lord is complete, he offers the worshippers the benedictions they desire, even if they worship only a part of his transcendental body. So this sloka mentions about demigod worshippers. Many people worship demigods with a material desire. But if they have a proper understanding that these demigods are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, then the Lord facilitates them by fulfilling their desires, by which gradually the person uh, comes back to the worship of Lord Krishna ultimately. So there, in the case, we see many cases, people who start worshipping the demigods, ultimately they reach one stage, they come to the point of worshipping the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada gives a quote from Bhagavad Gita 9:13. I'm running short of time. It says, "One of, O son of Purta, those who are not deluded, the great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. And these type of devotees are called Mahatmas." And in other words, they accept the demigods as different parts and parcels of Krishna and worship. Materialists, they worship demigods as different parts of Krishna and worship them for many benedictions. Although the devotees of demigods achieve the desired results offered by Krishna, they are described in Bhagavad Gita as Hritajnana. That means those who worship the demigods as independent of Krishna and they worship them for benediction, they are called Hritajnana, that is, they are low in intelligence, they don't have intelligence. Krishna does not desire one to be worshipped indirectly at different parts of the body. Krishna wants direct devotional worship. Therefore, a devotee worships Krishna through devotional service, as recommended in Srimad Bhagavatam, is quickly elevated to a transcendental position. Nevertheless, devotees who worship the demigods in the different parts of the Lord receive the benedictions they desire because the Lord is the original master of all benedictions. So it is the Lord who gives the benedictions to for the demigods to be given to the concerned worshippers also. Text number 27, translation Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead fulfills the material desires of a devotee who approaches him with such motives. But he does not bestow benedictions upon the devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions again. However, the Lord willingly gives the devotee shelter at his lotus feet, even though such a person does not aspire for it. And that shelter satisfied all his desires. That is the Supreme Personality of Personality's mercy. So many cases we see devotees of the Lord, They are not having a lot of material opulence, but still they are rich because they don't have any material desire from the Lord. And the Lord does not give material benefits to one. The Lord is an omnipotent. He knows, is omnipotent as well as omniscient. He knows what is right for a particular individual living entity. So if he knows that this living entity will, after getting opulence, forget him, then the Lord does not give any material benedictions to such a person, even if he's got an aspiration for that. Instead, the Lord gives shelter of his lotus feet, which is the ultimate shelter of all. So the Srila Prabhupada gives a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, Akama Sarva Kama Va Sloka, whether one is freed up from all material desires, is full of material desire, or desires to become one with the Supreme Lord, he should engage in devotion service to the Supreme Lord. In this way, not only will his desires be fulfilled, but the day will come when he will have no other desire to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. That means the Lord transforms a Sakama Bhakta who has got material desires to an Akama Bhakta who does not have any desire from the Lord, accepting to render devotion service. So Krishna is very, very merciful in that respect. However, if one engages in the devotional service of the lotus feet of the Lord, he does not want anything more. So when one starts engaging devotional service, he reaches a stage where he does not want anything more. That is the highest stage of devotional service. And an important point, the Lord is so kind that even to a Sakama Bhakta, a motivated devotee, that the Lord satisfies desires in such a way that one day he becomes an Akama Bhakta. Example is given about Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj wanted to see the Lord out of a material motive. He wanted a kingdom better than that of his father. But after seeing the Lord, he became an Akama Bhakta. He thought that, in fact, Srila Prabhupada gives a quotation from that sloka. Of course, it is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, "My dear Lord, I am satisfied simply to serve your lotus feet. I do not want any material benefit." Sometimes it is found that a small child eats dirty things, but his parents take away dirty things and offer him a sandesh. So devotees who aspire for material benedictions are compared to children who eat dust. But the Lord, finally, he knows, he gives them a sandesh by which he loses his taste for dust. And finally, the child can go back to Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that by his Lord's mercy, the Lord gives his lotus feet. By the attainment of its lotus feet, everything is obtained. Of course, there are different classes of devotees, one who performs devotional service without force, and some who perform devotional service by force. So an example is given, like Hanuman, devotional service is higher than that of Dhruva Maharaj, because Dhruva Maharaj had a material desire, but Hanuman had a natural love for Lord Rama. So even in devotional service, there are classifications. Another example is given that Putana had an intention to kill Krishna. Still, the Lord gave her a motherly nurse position. But the motherly position of the gopis is higher than that of Putna because they don't have any desire. So the conclusion is that which is attained without force is higher than that which is attained by force. So Krishna is very, very merciful. Text number 28. We are now living in the heavenly planets, undoubtedly as a result of our having performed ritualistic ceremonies, pious activities, yajnas, and having studied the Vedas. However, our lives here will one day be finished. We pray that at that time, if any merit remains from our pious activities, we may again take birth in Bharatavarsha as human beings, able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind that he personally comes to the land of Bharatavarsha and expands the good fortune of his people. So the demigods pray that even if they have performed some pious activities, they should take birth in Bharatavarsha as human beings so that they can remember the Lord. That next point in the purport is the Lord is so kind that he personally comes to the land of Bharatvarsha and expands the good fortune of his people. So Lord appeared here 5,000 years before as Krishna, and 500 years before the Lord appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it is very easy to practice devotional service in Bharatavarsha, where the Lord himself has appeared. A human being born in land of Bharatvarsha has a special prerogative to develop Krishna consciousness. Therefore, those who are born in Bharatvarsha should take lessons from the Shastras and Guru and should fully take advantage of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, by which one can go back to Godhead. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comment that the human beings in Bharatvarsha, one must perform many pious activities to take birth in Bharatvarsha. But demigods from heavenly planets want to take birth in Bharatvarsha. So those who are here, they have a desire to go to heavenly planets. But the denizens of heavenly planets want to take birth in Bharatvarsha. Text 29 and 30. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, in the opinion of some learned scholars, 8 smaller islands surround Jamudvipa. When the sons of Maharaja Sakara were searching all over the world for their lost horse, they dug up the earth, and this way 8 adjoining islands came into existence. The names of these islands are Swareshta, Prashta, Chandra Shukla, Avartana, Mandara Hari, Panchajanya, Shila." I couldn't translate that, convert that to Balaram font, so I'm not able to read it out. Conclusion is, although the demigods are situated in exalted position in the heavenly planet, they nevertheless decide to descend to the Bharatvarsha on the planet Earth. This indicates that even the demigods are unfit to reside in Bharatvarsha. Therefore, a person born in Bharatvarsha live like cats and dogs, not taking full advantage of their birth in this land. They are certainly unfortunate. That means the demigods who have ascended to heaven by performance of fruitive activities, by charity and so forth, they are unfit to reside in Bharatvarsha. Therefore, they have gone to heavenly planets. But those who are born in Bharatvarsha, but not taking the advantage of this birth in the Bharatvarsha, they are like cats and dogs, and they are very unfortunate. Text number 31, the last verse. My dear King Parishad, O best of the descendants of Bharatvarsha, I have thus described to you as I myself have been instructed. The island of Bharatvarsha and its adjoining islands. These are the islands that constitute Jambudvipa. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport, the 5th canto of 19th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled A Description of the Island of Jambudvipa. With this, I conclude the class for the day. Any one of you have got some questions or comments? I can take 1 or 2 questions.